Uh, Good evening, everyone. This is Ron. It is Monday evening, a little after 6 p.m., and we will get started with our session. As usual, we'll start with questions to see if anyone has any questions or comments on anything that comes to mind. Anyone?
I got a comment. I wasn't on yesterday, but do you know when they'll be uploading yesterday's?
It should be out already, I would think.
I
It,
went on
Hey,
there.
it's,
anyone?
It's on now.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
already it
Oh,
that
okay, I
came
went
up.
on the day earlier and I couldn't pull it up. Okay, but I try again. But I would like to share something that happened here in Gaffney on Friday, I think. Um, it was a guy that was, I don't know if he had hit another truck or car on the boulevard, but the policeman came and it kept me back to George Floyd, even though from what they were saying that the guy tried to pull the policeman's gun out of his holster, and the policeman shoved him so hard up against the car that the video, I tried to send it to Reverend Richards, but it wouldn't. It was so long it wouldn't let me send it. I couldn't send it to him. But he pushed the guy up against the car, and the guy just, it looked like he just bounced. They say he was tasing the man when he pushed him, and if the man, in a few minutes, the man fell from the car to the ground, and he was tasing him while he was laying. He was standing up, but he was tasing him while he was on the ground, and the guy laid there for a while before he finally raised his head up. And people were coming down the boulevard just blowing the horns, as if they were trying to get him to stop. And traffic was just backed up, and it just kept me back, to about George Floyd being killed, and the way they did him, and the way, in these other cities where they were tasing the people till they eventually died. I hadn't heard anything else other than they carried him to the hospital, and the policeman broke his arm, I guess, scuffling with him. So I hadn't heard anything else since that. I didn't get a newspaper today to see if anything was in it, but it kind of kept me back a little bit. I just wanted to share that.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Well, how does it make you feel?
It made me feel, I guess I was sad because, looking at the video and saying, what if this man is laying there dead, then maybe something would have happened here in Gaffney, like a riot or something, I don't know. But there's been nobody walking the streets, anything, protesting anything as of yet. And I, hoping prayerfully they don't. But it just made me feel kind of sad to see it, with my own eyes. You see it on the TV, but you never thought you would actually see it, here. And my cousin was videoing it because they were up on the boulevard when it happened. So it kind of made me feel kind of sad.
Did you actually see it?
My niece saw it. They videoed
Okay.
it.
Well, that's close enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is tragic, but we built a society where policemen feel entitled. And, I always thought the most difficult jobs, public service jobs, should be the most difficult jobs. Teaching, police. I used to put ministers in there, but now I don't think about them that much. But at least those first two should be really hard to get those jobs. They should be well taken, compensated. And plus, I think in the case of the police, I just have believed for a long time the tactics are wrong. They're just wrong. And they create a lot of these things. But anyway, well, I hope the person's okay. I'm sorry I made you. Well, I'm not sorry I made you feel upset. It should make you feel upset. It should never get to be normal, right?
Right.
Okay, well, I don't mean to take the discussion off where it needs to go, but
Well, don't always know where it needs to go. I was watching the ball game last night, and Pastor called me. He and I were talking, and I was flipping channels. Actually, he called me to tell me something about the ball game, and I was flipping channels trying to get to the ball game, and I saw the shooting that took place, the latest one out in California, and 10 people died, and it really took me to a different place rather rapidly, and we see far too much of this stuff is, and Pastor pulled some information and said that there has been 33 mass shootings so far this year, and that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. So that sort of prompted me for what we were going to talk about tonight. So I just a couple of verses I want to look at. I don't really have a whole lot tonight, unless you guys have some stuff you want to talk about. Nick, I think, did an awesome job, and last couple of days, couple of weeks actually, gave us a lot of tremendous eye-opening information. And can someone please mute your phone? Everybody, make sure the phones are muted, please. And I can't dare go back and recap some of the things, but some of the things he said kind of got my mind going, especially when he was talking about hell, living hell on earth, and moving hell, that taking you out of your balance, your place of balance. That kind of hit home with me, and of course some of the other things he said, but and us talking about the signs of the time and the cycles that he talked about with the constellations, the stars and the moon and whatnot. So all those things kind of got my attention, and I don't think it's coincidental that we are at this place now, that we had that lesson and all the things we witnessed. So I sometimes feel like we are a piece of fruit that is ripening and ready to become nourishment. And still don't quite know what all that means, but that's just something that pops in my head every now and then when we have one of these lessons. But let's look at Luke 21. There are a couple of verses in here that really stood out to me. I'm sorry, did anyone else have a question or comment? Kathy,
Good morning. Go ahead, Ron.
George, I just want to say, Kathy, thank you for sharing. I don't know exactly what to say. I think we see far too much of that. I think it's not an exception. It is the rule. It's what policing looks like. If it wasn't what policing supposed to look like, it would have stopped by now, because the powers that be would have been firmer about it. As Richard said, that must be the training. That must be the training that they get. So I don't know. I just don't know what to say about that. But I think we see it for a reason. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
One of the questions that I'm seeking someone or people to help me process is just how people think. And based upon what Nick said on yesterday of how females maneuver in their thought patterns and how males maneuver in their thought patterns, yet it's not, to me, all the way about that. It's just how people in general think. And what I mean by that is when I'm in Los Angeles, you will hear, "What's up, blood? What's up, cuz?" But when you in Oakland, "Hey, my guy, what's happening?" Or if you're in Philly, "Hey, that's my young bull right there." People in Houston, the north side of Houston maneuvers differently than the south side of Houston. So as it relates to how we think in the courtroom, anytime I've been selected for jury duty, the defense has always selected me. Didn't matter how I was dressed. If I was in a suit, the defense always wanted me. If I was in my work attire, the defense always wanted me. Yet in the courtroom, there are different dynamics of it. With the female, it's different. And this is documented by Joellen Demetrius, that in her selection of the jury for the OJ trial, he told Johnny Cochran to go after females who were uneducated. And the same thing was also told to Marsha Clark and Chris Darden, that you want educated black females to be a jury. And Joellen Demetrius told Johnny Cochran or the Dream Team that you want African-American females who are not educated. So is there a spiritual connection in that of, is it something spiritual in there? Now, studies have shown since 1970 that the more educated you become, the more cowardly you become. So is there something in there that there's something spiritual? Because
George,
like
say that again. Say that one more time. The more educated you become, the what? The more what?
In my terms, the more cowardly you become. That's how I say it. However, the study may say something differently, and it's I just associate it with, if your paycheck is real close to your truth, you can be easily compromised. Yet, is there something spiritual in this that I'm not seeing? Like, say, in the courtroom, the defense will always want the African-American female that's not educated. And just based upon my experience, and this is just my experience, and my experience should have no impact on you. I respect your experience, and it shouldn't have an impact on me. If that's your experience, that's your experience. With my nieces on my side of the family, one of my nieces said, "George, you always wear the same clothes every week." So my other niece said, "Well, JoJo the only one paying the bills in the house. He got to keep his cards close to him." Now, my niece that said that has a master's degree. The niece that took up for me, she grimy, gritty. She doesn't have a 4-year degree or anything. So I'm just asking, is there something spiritual in there? And this is documented about the jury selection. There was, out of 45 jurors that were selected, 17 of them were African Americans, and about 12 of them were African American females. That's a strong number. So is there something spiritual in this that I'm missing? How do you feel about that? And I will say, for the record, not just with people who are educated females, educated people can be some of the meanest people that you can deal with. They kind of difficult in reasoning with at times. Yet nonetheless, based upon what Nick was saying about the thought process and how we maneuver, yet the court system is saying the defense, we want that African American male. No matter
Okay.
what. Go ahead. That's it. If anyone can help me see if there's something spiritual in there. Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to answer George's question? In part, maybe.
Well, I'll put my foot in it. George, my immediate reaction is, I don't think you need to try that hard. Just relax and think about it logically. What's the purpose of jury selection and all that? It's to win, to seek the most advantage and win. It's not about justice. All that is set aside. It's about the process. So you're going to try to find the jurors that you think are going to get you what you need. And you've already decided what side you're on, and maybe just like attorney generals have decided you're guilty until something proves you innocent, and sometimes that's even years down the road. But I think it's the way our system has evolved, that the name of the game is to try to win. And this is all about try to win. You talked about weeks ago the idea of a dirty job, which I think more appropriately is in sports. It's not a dirty job. It's a person who's been brought onto the team as an enforcer or a defender. It's not the way you and I played ball when we were kids, but this is what's evolved in the game. So this is the way a lot of things in our system are being set up. So that's what I would say about it.
Yeah. Is there anyone else?
Well, here's the part that, and forgive me, what's your name again? Forgive me. What was your name?
Richard.
Richard. Give me, Richard. Here's the part that just scares me. When clinical psychologists state that educated African American females don't have any empathy for the African American male. And that really scares me. And that's taught in every law school. That's taught at the University of South Carolina Law Department. That is taught at UNC. That part really just intrigues me of, in y'all experiences, do you find that to be true or not true?
No, I don't think in everyday life you have opportunity to measure it from that degree. I agree with what Richard is saying. There's been a lot of science put into that, as you were alluding to right now. The thoughts of an educated person versus an uneducated, a female versus a male, race. You know, a black man kills a white man. Are you going to put uneducated black men on that juror as jurors? If the black man is uneducated black man that committed the murder or allegedly committed the murder, so the objective is to win, and studies have been put together on that to give them every advantage that they can. Yeah, you do think, or as you have mentioned, there may be studies out that the African American female is less sympathetic if she's educated, because she, now is removed herself from being accessible to that uneducated black male. So she has no sympathy or sensitivity to him. I don't know. I haven't seen those studies, and I haven't. I can't say personally that I've witnessed that, but I would not doubt it that that there's data out there that supports that sort of thing. So spiritually, I don't know. I can't say from that perspective, but scientifically, yeah, I'm sure those studies are out there, and I'm sure a lot of research time and money is going into helping to make those decisions. So I would be
Well,
interested. I would be interested though if one of the women on the line have an opinion on this.
well, in conclusion, for everyone, just look up the female Jo Ellen Demetrius. She's a white female, and she's a jury consultant. And she's not so much known for the OJ trials. I mean, she is known. They label her or tattoo her as a SEER, a seer, or someone. Just look her up, and you will hear what she stated about
Okay.
who she wanted, and that because if you say something like that, well, with me, if I say something like that, I at least have to show you where my information came from. But that's it. But if anyone, what is your interpretation? Then doesn't have to be a female, but anyone.
Yeah.
I have a comment. I think everything is spiritual. I think people try to sway things to their own selfish purposes, but everything is spiritual. In terms of the African American woman being biased toward the African American man, well, we've been taught to do that, not only by the white system, but also by the Black male. So, but again, all of that is spiritual, because if you as a Black female, or you as a Black male, or you as whoever you are not in touch with yourself, then you are not connected to the Creator in any real sense of the word. So our system kind of perpetuates people being independent, self-reliant, all of those kinds of things. And they teach us not to be our brother's keeper. So, I mean, that's our system. But there is a spiritual perspective for that. And that is that we don't believe in being our brother's keeper in terms of our cultural system. So it's all spiritual. I mean, those Black uneducated women, they might know themselves real well. We don't know. I mean, and on the other hand, they might not. But I'm just saying, everything is spiritual. It all has spiritual ramifications. It's just the way we look at it, and sometimes the spin that's put on it by people who are not looking to create any kind of spiritual environment. They're just doing things for their own purposes. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Your 2 cents is appreciated. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. Everything is spiritual. I just said I didn't think any thought in that direction went into those decisions. But I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, I guess if it'll close out the conversation, yes, everything's spiritual, but I think more so to what the question was, the aspect that it demonstrates is lack of self-knowledge. Why would you act that way unless you weren't connected, had a sense of oneness with the Creator, the love, and all of that? So ultimately, everything's spiritual, but then we know all the behaviors that can spill out when we're talking about ourselves and others in a state of less than what? Oneness, less than total connection. So that's where that comes from to me.
Yeah, I agree. And then we as Black people, we have too many things that can get in the way. Our trauma, our job, our family, our whatever. There's just too many things that can get in the way. And especially the trauma of being Black in America.
Yeah, I've said this a couple of times in my family and not thinking about it. I remember the first time I said to, we were at Thanksgiving one day, one couple of years ago, I guess, and I made the statement. I said, I don't remember any time in my life, even when I was out there acting crazy and doing all the stuff young men do. I don't remember a time that I didn't appreciate who I was, even before I knew any better. And that included being a Black man. And I think I got a lot of that from my family. We just enjoyed being around each other, and there was pride there. And, you grow up, we all grew up in religious, most of us anyway, I would suppose, grew up in religious household. And you had a strong feeling about who God was and thinking, you know what, this is no coincidence. You believe that or you don't. So, but at the same time, stepping out of the house or stepping into the world, wearing this Blackness has been a burden at times, So it is something extra that you deal with. But I thank the Creator that it also helped me see who I was a little bit clearer. And I don't mean that spiritually. That has always been something different. But I mean just appreciating who I was as a person as much as I could, I guess, at that time. But yeah, interesting question, George.
Well, thank you for everyone's response, and everyone's response was appreciated on my end. And the one response that did stick out to me was we don't buy into the concept of being our people's keeper or our brother's keeper, and it's some stuff. There's some more stuff I still got to just read, but it's just how people think, and how they maneuver. And DC and Baltimore, to be so close, they maneuver differently. A Philadelphian maneuvers differently than someone out of the boroughs of New York. And a Yonkers individual maneuvers differently than someone in Brooklyn. So it's just how we can be so close to one another yet maneuver differently. The upstate of South Carolina maneuvers differently than the lower part of the state, yet we're all connected. Yet our maneuverability is different. In Charleston, or the lower part, I would say Charleston, they cook rice with everything.
But George, let me ask you, George, isn't that maneuverability everybody's way of getting along where they live, fitting in where they live?
Well, it's a yes and no to that. Yes, you're going to maneuver based upon the environment that you come out of.
Yeah.
So it's just different that, you know, I got Watson blood in me and I got Wilson blood in me. Those are two different bloodlines. Two different, and they maneuver differently. Yet in the maneuverability of the Watson and the Wilson being my mama, I get down with them Watson. And I did that at an early childhood. And it's usually the children will always side with the mama side of the family quicker than they align themselves up with the father side of the family. And in my situation of growing up, I grew up more around Watsons because it was more close in proximity. The Wilsons, that was DC to Philly, yet the Watsons was just down the road. So you're going to adapt to your environment, and then from there, you know, you choose who you elect to, or at least I chose to align myself up with who I thought was more pure.
Well, I think you're talking about nature of nurture, but you know, I think some of that takes a back seat when you really find out who you are in terms of your connection to the Creator. I mean, of course, you will still be a Watson or whatever, or sorry, don't remember the other name of your family, but anyway, of course, you will still have those influences, and you will still feel that that's your family, and you're going to stick up for your family. But on the other hand, when you really come to know yourself, there's some things that are going to change in you that you won't necessarily do that your family does anymore. Do you see what I'm saying? Or you might not feel the same way as, say, some of your family members about a certain thing, because you have more of a real perspective about it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, and I agree with everything that everyone has said. It's just that when I look at Foundation and Greater New Faith, we both covered by Reverend Richard and Miss Richard. Yet we maneuver differently. Now, this is just me. If I'm lecturing, I would much rather lecture to Foundation people than I would Greater New Faith. And I'm not saying anything negative about Greater New Faith. I'm just saying how close we can be to one another, yet we can maneuver differently. And if you maneuver differently, that means your thoughts are different. It's just a real intriguing topic to me. That
okay, there you go. You just said it. You just said it though. Your thoughts become different. When you really get to know yourself, your thoughts become different. So even though you still have those things from your family and from your friends, still your thoughts become different.
Thank you. I didn't mean to tie it up with a conversation and stuff, but and forgive me for saying but. However, although yet, like I said, it was just a question, and everyone's answer on my end was greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't have to apologize. That's what we do. I mean, sometimes we talk about what we talk about. My thoughts throughout this whole thing kind of kind of went in a different direction. Uh, Two examples I'll give before I talk about mine. I remember uh, this black guy from Africa who lived in the jungles, or for lack of a better term, I call them jungles, but in the woods or the forest at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro. And the Europeans came in and bought up all the land because, they, even though they were tribes living there, they couldn't pay taxes on the land because they didn't live like that. They traded. Some were fishermen, and some were hunters, and some were gatherers, and some were farmers, and they knew how and when to rotate the crops, and so they bartered and traded and moved around that way. And when it happened that they lost their land, they didn't have a choice but to go to work for someone. And I remember this guy saying, we became poor. And that stuck with me. And I remember this Indian chief saying something similar in North America, rather I say this Native American chief. He said, I didn't appreciate the land as much as I thought I did until it was gone. And then I recognized it. And I say similar. I remember my childhood when we were kids, and you lived in black neighborhoods, and you had black stores, and you had a black school, and integration is what changed things. Integration is when you started feeling different. Integration is what made you, kind of look at yourself a little harder, or feel like you didn't have as much as everybody else had. So, just looking at that, and we talk about the burdens. The burdens seemed to be lighter, and when things were simpler, and you didn't think about those things, and being poor and not having wasn't an issue. You weren't poor. You weren't poor then. You didn't have anything, but you weren't poor. You had everything and you had nothing. But things changed. Where are we now with those changes? So, anyway, just a thought.
Ron, hi, this is Kathy. I was listening to the discussion, and as I'm listening, I'm thinking, because I'm hearing a lot of good information going forward, but I'm really thinking about George's question and from the beginning, where he cited a study. And the first thing that comes to mind for me about a study is the question becomes, what is a study? A study is nothing more than a hypothesis that someone formulated, and then they set about to, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say manipulate some values to make the study look the way you may want it to look. So study results can be skewed. When I took classes 2 years ago at Cornell to get a nutrition degree, the first thing they had us to do was they called it the crap test, because it ended up being a lot of research involved in these classes. And they said to us, anybody can print a study. You need to know what to look for it to be authentic. And the crap was a synonym for, not synonym, but it stood for something. I can't even remember what those words those letters stood for. But the point of the matter is this. At some point, if we are looking at the very things, even in the Bible, that were used to divide us, why give so much value to a study by those that conducted the study that I look at intent? What would be the intent of that study to say the African American woman does not support the man? If you look at what that, to me, in my opinion, is one more obstacle for us to overcome, to be united, because once again, it pits us against each other to make us distrust or to think I'm not being supported by the people who are supposed to support me, who should know me best. And so I always look at the intent of something. And if that resonates, if I'm reading these studies and it's resonating in me, then my question becomes why? Why is it that that resonates with me? I'm more in tune with, like, we're digging up all the stuff in the scriptures that have divided us as a race of people. We have to give these studies that same consideration. If this thing is saying we are more divided than ever, then my question becomes, what do I do to change that? How do I go in there and not let that be my reality? We've been talking about mindset, changing your mind, changing your thoughts. If you're buying into that, then it's a study out there. Anything you look to find, be it unifying or divisive, if you look for it, there is a study there that will confirm whatever it is you're believing. So with all the teaching that's gone forward, how we're learning to uproot untruths and how we're learning to look at things, there comes a time when I've got to start the uprooting from inside of me. Even if that has been my mindset, that I don't see us as African-American men and women working together and flowing in unity, then am I going to be continue to perpetuate or that fact or that truth, if it's a truth for someone, because it's not the truth for everyone, or am I going to be the difference in that situation? So I look beyond a study to look at intent. And what would the intentions of a study be? To continue to say we're not a unified people. We were taught not to be a unified people. Then you want to do a study, say, hey, look at here, y'all aren't a unified people. We are learning to be one. We are learning that we are giving up what we were brainwashed to believe about ourselves and walking to the reality of who we are. And when we embrace that, there are no more divisive male, female energy doing this, blah, blah, blah. It is learning to coexist and to be united and work together as one entity. And so I just wanted to share that because I guess I'm looking at it from a different angle, because I just remember when we were talking studies, I'm thinking about, but what's the crap test on this? Is it real? Because I can do a study tomorrow and pay to get the results if I got enough money to say whatever I wanted to say. But that's not what's important. Even if you read that, what are you going to do with it? Do you let it define you and that becomes your reality? Or do you recognize it as something divisive and dig that up and say, no, thank you. We're learning how to walk in unity and truth, and that's what I'm going to buy into. And those are just my thoughts on it. I wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Kathy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Mary, because I was feeling a certain kind of way, and I wasn't able to verbalize it as well as Kathy did, because she's right. She's absolutely right. And we always have to be mindful of studies, because the studies showed that we had smaller brains. The study shows that we had a higher rate of mental illness. The study shows all kind of things, but it's what you intend. And now that we're learning, I'm learning that you and I are one. We came from the same crate, and everything in this universe is a part of us. So to get that division out is the way we need to go and look at love. And I really want to apologize to George for all the people that he met that he thought was educated and was mean to him, because everyone is not like that. I'm sorry for the interaction you had with the ones that you thought were so educated, because a lot of because most people aren't like that. And now we're trying to learn. So, hey, I just, it's all about love. It's about unity. And if it's about division, it is not of the Creator. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Thank you for saying that, Mary.
Anyone else? I just have a quick thought that sort of goes along with what we were talking about and witnessed the last few weeks, and that was in Luke 21. A couple of verses. There's a lot of information here, and I saw two verses that kind of jumped out at me. But then I read the whole chapter and see that it's loaded with information. But I'm going to read verse 10 and 11, then I'm going to read verse 25, and we can talk about this, and you can talk about any of this that you see fit, if you see something to tie in. Verse 10 says, then he continued by saying to them, nations will rise against nation and kingdoms against kingdom, and there will be a great earthquake, and in various places plagues and famines, and there will be terror and great signs from heaven. And verse 25 says, and there will be signs in the sun and the moon, the stars, and upon the earth, dismay among nations and perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves. I read the next verse. Men fainting from fear and expectation of things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. A lot as it goes on in the earth, and a lot we see around us. And I think we beginning to understand and feel the power and responsibility of being the balance of what is. And as Kathy started the day off telling us about another encounter with the police, all these things are not just coincidentally happening. So I listened to Pastor last night, and as I say, that kind of took me into a different space when I saw there was yet another shooting, and I thought about the weather patterns and the people that are being misplaced, and even some of the weathers and situations still going on in Africa and across the globe for that matter. And you think about us and who we are, and it is in our lifetime that we have opportunity to influence the earth. We have the opportunity to influence mankind and be spiritual and bring about balance and harmony. And when I look at these verses, the Bible, and there will be great earthquakes in various places. Throughout the Bible, the scripture talks about earthquakes. It's mentioned quite a bit, and I had some stuff written down when I was at work and don't have it with me. But just looking at the different verses that talk about earthquakes, and some of it, it means terror, it means noise, but symbolically it means more than that. It talks about strength, it talks about power, it talks about opportunity to changes in the land. So what I'm getting at is as Nick said on yesterday, or Saturday. This hell, this fire can be destructive or it cannot be destructive, and there has to be someone in the earth that determines that this is not destructive. It will do what it will do and what its purpose is to do. But as this verse has said in the last couple of weeks, verse 25 talks about the physical universe, but it's also talking about the spiritualness of the universe. And as we have talked about the planets lining up, we talked about the age of Aquarius, we've talked about the comet, we talked about all these opportunities to gather this energy. All this energy that as we've learned has come in cycles in the earth, and I even believe that we are influencers of the cycles. Not as boastful as that may sound, but I think, as the scripture says, the earth groans and waits for man to see who he is, and that's me paraphrasing it, but I think as the universe and the atmosphere recognizes that, then these patterns and cycles also are part of that. So it is no coincidence that all of this energy is available, and we, diligently study and seek this and grow in and coming to places of awareness and even I've personally moved to a place that the things I even don't understand, that if I feel it, I got it. I can't explain it. Nick talked for days. I can't tell you a doggone thing Nick said, but I got it. I got it. It is in me. So as I recognize that, as I feel it, and as I said, these verses are filled with stuff that I think describes where we are right now and what we're feeling and the opportunity. So there are two things here. One, I went to work this morning and I mentioned the shooting and talking to people, and no one seemed interested in it. A couple people I mentioned it to, and that tells me one or two things. One, they may not have been interested in it because it seems like when things happen far away, it doesn't affect us, and we don't buy into it as readily. And a lot of times, let's face it, we someone has to be the people for everybody. If it's Black people, then we feel that immediately. If it's women, we feel it immediately. We also have to feel it for everybody, whether or not they're Asians, whether or not they're Jewish, whether or not they're whatever they are. We have to have that feeling for them. We have to feel that sympathy and that hurt and that pain, and be just as enthusiastic about shedding light on it. Likewise, the other thing is we hear these things so often, maybe we're becoming insensitive to them. So I listen to people today, and I won't say they didn't seem concerned, but maybe they're just not as sensitive as they would have been 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Because these things seem to be escalating. 33 of them, and we haven't even had 33 days in the year. So that's something just to give thought to, and kind of looking at who we are, recognizing that, and understanding that we are the spiritual. We represent the spiritual awakening in mankind. That the fire that Nick talked about does not always have to be hellish. And we are also the hope for those who may be feeling a little hopelessness right now. And that not goes on, is meant for California. That's meant for those people who are literally facing famines and hopelessness and wars and because it is so much going on, a lot of confusion out there. So, any thoughts and questions?
Ron, this is Charles. As everybody was talking and I'm listening, I'm thinking these things is happening because we're still sleeping through it. Not only, like I'm saying, sleeping through it, we've been numb to it. And until, like you said, until someone stands up and said, no, this is not happening anymore. Father, whatever you want us to do, want us to say, want us to be, we'll do it. Just like George said about the black woman education, this stuff ain't doing nothing but trying to wake us up.
Yeah.
All that putting against each other, God is trying to wake us up. Dad, you get all the education in the world, still asleep. You ain't gonna do nobody no good but yourself. And not only this, the word of God said, when your family, if you don't have any family anymore, he'll give you a new family. I know the bloodline goes a long way, but God's word is Father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. This is Linda. I was reading that same article that you were talking about today, and the man that killed those people in that dance studio, not only did he kill them, he went to another studio to do the same thing, and this guy that was at the front desk saw him come in with the gun, and he was like, he said he felt like he knew his life was going, he was going to die, so he attacked the man, and they scuffled with the gun, and he got the gun out the man's hand, and he got away. But then he went, the guy called the police, and they came out. He told them who he was, and he was an Asian man, and that he what kind of van he was driving. So they put out an APB on him, and when they found him, he committed suicide. He killed himself. So my question is, if you can take a life like that and then you can turn around and take your own life, you don't care about life in general, do you? So it didn't bother him that he was killing these people because he could take his own life.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Linda. We don't value life anymore. And I say we, I'm talking about mankind. I'm talking about mankind and the dark valley we seem to be falling in. And we are, everything is spiritual. So that's, the part that I'm trying to pull out of this, that we have to be the ones that twist the light and out of all of this darkness and stand up to it. So that's, you're exactly right. You gave some details there that I didn't know. I didn't know how they about him encountering the other man going to a second studio. That part I didn't know. Hopelessness. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, I guess as a way to deal with it, a sense that I have, and it's a generalization, which I've held for a long time. In fact, I learned the phrase from you all, that what you don't take care of at home, you're going to have to take care of in the street. And said another way, the feelings you have toward, or lack of understanding and knowledge you have of self, you're going to project out. Now, most people don't do it aggressively or violently, but some do. And that's what I think is at the core of so much of this. And we like to put on the news all the surface aspects, but we don't get into what drove this guy to do this and other people like him. Why this? And this isn't something new. In different forms, this has been going on for as long as I've been alive. So anyway, that's my sense of it. You get violent, particularly toward others, when you can't deal with your own, what's the word? You know, what is that phrase? One way to drive a man insane is to make him feel worthless. It's all, to me, connected with that. So that comes back to how we treat each other. And the way we treat each other is how we treat ourselves. The whole do unto others part, the easy part is others to a certain extent. The question is how you treat yourself. If you're going to be truthful to the other part, the treating others. And that's where it gets messed up, I think. And that's what we're trying to find our way through. Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
The question that I asked was, okay, what is in this that I need to see? And I think part of what I saw is that in this particular instance, the community was Asian. I don't know if we've heard of anything like this happening in the Asian community to this extent in the States. And the other part of it was an Asian who did this. And so, you know, if it were anyone else, what would be the byline? Hate crime, blah, 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 blah. So what is it saying to us? This is saying to us, I believe, that it doesn't matter who they are or who I am. If, as you said, Ron, we are one, we should have that same desire to have the universe respond in such a way that this is balanced. And it's not only balanced for Blacks or Jews or Muslims, but for everybody. It also says to me that the same kinds of drivers that motivate other people to shoot, other races to shoot, are the same drivers that motivate anyone to potentially do this. And so rather than looking at it, and I feel for it. I really feel, just like I felt for the folk in Buffalo, just like I felt for others in other shootings. And that's the thing that we've got to do. We understand and we know better. Now, when I say better, I don't mean that in the way it sounds. I mean, we know more of the of the spiritual underpinning of why this can happen, because as has been said throughout the conversations today, people just don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They just don't know who they are. And so it's just a reminder to all of us that this kind of violence has no barriers, has no ethnic group that's exceptional, that whatever is occurring is the same thing that causes other kinds of violence to this extent. And so we need to continue, as we're doing right now, getting to the root of it. And it's been said several times, the root of it is spiritual. That's the very root of it. And so that's where we need to keep our focus. While we need to be, we can empathize and sympathize, we need to continue to put in the macro what it is that needs to occur for balance and healing and harmony to occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I was reminded. Nick talks so fast sometimes and says so much. I'll stop and think about one thing, and it was said. Next thing I know, he's 2 or 3 sentences ahead of me. But one thing I wrote down that kind of ties into what Barbara just said when you're talking about Jerusalem, because I had looked that up myself about something I was trying to pull together, and the Jeru part, that being that Christ principle that is in you, that awareness of who you are, that part, that peace that is there, that balance that is there, that ever increasing awareness that is there in you, and then that part that brings you peace beyond anything, just so when you look at that, and there was a word here that jumped out at me, and Barbara touched on it in verse 11 of this chapter, Luke 21, the word famine. There is no godliness in the land. There is no godliness coming out of the church. The people are not being nourished at all. The churches may be full. There may be ministry all over the television. You may hear the word God, 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 Lord, 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 and Jesus, 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 but they are not being fed. So that Jeru, that thing that is in us, as Barbara alluded to, that thing that is in us, we have the power to show it to others, to bring that awareness into the land. The land doesn't have to be a famine. The fire doesn't have to be hell. It can be purification. It can be a cleansing. So my prayer, along with what Charles said and what Barbara said, is, Father, show us how. What direction? What do we do here? Give us the wisdom to do this. Give us the wisdom to do this. Because the land cries out. And as the fruit ripens, we are ready to be the nourishment. That there be no more famine in the land. Oh, I'm just, my heart just hurts every time you don't recognize that you are in a relaxed state. But when you hear these things again, it just kind of drops you. It's like, oh, here we go again, really? And I don't know how else to feel about that. But anyway, any other questions or comments? Can I tie in one other thing? And this was just something. This, I think, is a lesson within itself. The first 4 verses here in this chapter 21, he says that he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury, and he saw a certain poor widow pulling in her 2 small copper coins. And he said, truly I say unto you, this poor widow put more than all of them. For they all out of their surplus put into the offering, but she out of her poverty put in all that she had to live on. That is, I remember as a child hearing someone speak on this, and that has always stuck with me. Because I remember when I was a kid, I remember thinking, how can she do that? How can she give her last? And this, I guess, kind of took on the role of a what's it called? The parable. This kind of took his role as a parable. Just kind of stuck with me and kind of unfold to me bit by bit. Because I see this a little differently than what I had originally seen it. We think of a certain poor widow. We think of someone as being an elderly person who, as it calls her poor, and we can kind of picture what that looks like. In a spiritual sense, though, I see it a little differently as compared to the first two verses. I see her more in line with all of us, whether you look at it individually or collectively. We have allowed everything to fall away, whether it be ambitions, and I'm not necessarily even talking materialistically, but I'm talking about the material things you have because they are necessary. We live in this earth, but I'm talking about like ambitions and status and all those things that come along with life that we have been taught from an early age are important. If those things were still important to us, I doubt that we would still be on this phone. We would have dropped away by now. But all those things have fallen away from her, and even she has allowed her masculinity to die. And what do I mean by that? I think back on the lessons that we studied years ago, where we talked about, Barbara talked about, introduced us to being equally yoked, and that ego, that mindfulness, coming under submission until you train it to be not as ambitious as it once was or has always been. So I don't see this as her physical husband dying. I see this as her ego and her stubborn side and her judgmental side and all these things falling away from her. And now she's being totally spiritual. All of these things are like the water turning into wine. She's totally spiritual now, and she's poor because she has nothing else. There is nothing more important than her life as a widow, as a spiritual being that is able to give all that she has. So that is the lesson that I take from that, and I think it kind of ties in to what we say. All that we are, all that we have, we offer now to the situation. We offer to the universe. We offer to the earth and to mankind. We freely give of ourselves to bring about awareness and enlightenment. Questions, y'all? Anybody?
When you were saying that, Ron, and that woman gave all that she had, she was giving her life.
Yes. Yes. And so are you, Charles. Yes. We are at a beautiful place, y'all. We're talking about some serious stuff, but we are at a beautiful place. With a
What
beautiful
you just said begs the question, Ron. She gave all that she had. And so when we say to ourselves, I can't make a difference, one person can't make a difference,
Yeah.
that's not giving the all. That should be something we cast aside and not use anymore as an excuse. Every individual can and does make a difference as it relates to the universe. And the reason is because of our oneness, our connectedness.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Life is beautiful. Life is beautiful because we know who we are. This is awesome to me. So, if there are no other questions, we leave. We ponder this, and I, for one, has take in what has been said and take Barbara's last words to be my comfort as we get off the line and tonight, that no more, just little old me, or I can't do this, or what can I do, or this feels too big for me. No, it does not. You are in the earth for this purpose. We are in the earth for this purpose. And you look around, and if you look around, you see Ron, you see Barbara, you see Nick, you see Kathy, you see Charles. You see all of us. And all of that strength and all of that energy. Have a wonderful night. Have a great week. And I look forward to seeing you all Saturday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.